He changed the way the world listens, works, speaks, and even thinks about technology. But the man behind Apple was not a soft genius sitting quietly in a corner. He was intense, demanding, unpredictable, and at times almost impossible to deal with. Some people called him brilliant. Others called him cruel. But no one could deny one simple truth: Steve Jobs was a force of nature. And the story of how an adopted boy from California became the man who reshaped modern life is one of the most powerful business stories ever told. Before there was Steve Jobs was born in 1955 in San Francisco and was adopted shortly after birth. His biological parents gave him up, and that early separation became one of the hidden wounds of his life. He grew up with adoptive parents in California, in a middle-class home that gave him stability, love, and the freedom to be curious. From an early age, Jobs was drawn to electronics, tools, and machines. He wanted to know how things worked. He wanted to take them apart and understand the invisible logic inside them. While other kids were just playing, he was already observing, experimenting, and asking questions that seemed too serious for his age. He was not a calm child. He was stubborn, intense, and often difficult. But even as a boy, there was something unusual about him. He did not simply want to use technology. He wanted to shape it. He wanted control over the experience, the feeling, the meaning behind it. That instinct would define everything he did later. Growing up in California, Jobs lived in a world that looked ordinary from the outside. But inside his mind, everything was already moving faster. He was fascinated by electronics and loved the feeling of understanding how a thing was built. He did not want to just own objects. He wanted to know their structure, their logic, their soul. That kind of thinking was rare in a child. Most children ask what something is. Jobs wanted to know why it existed, how it worked, and how it could be made better. Even at that age, he was building the habits that would later define Apple: curiosity, control, and obsession with detail. At school, Jobs was not the kind of student who followed the rules just to fit in. He was intelligent, but he was also impatient. He could be disruptive, sharp, and stubborn when he believed something was wrong or boring. He did not respect systems that had no vision behind them. This made him hard to manage, but it also made him different. He was already learning a lesson that many people never learn in life. Being talented is not enough. To change the world, you also need conviction. You need the nerve to trust your own instinct when everyone else is following the obvious path. During these years, Jobs met Steve Wozniak. That meeting changed everything. Wozniak was the technical genius. He loved building things. Jobs had something else: vision. He understood that a product was not just a machine. It was an experience. It was an object people would touch, want, admire, and talk about. That combination, engineering plus vision, became the foundation of Apple. The meeting between Jobs and Wozniak was not just the beginning of a partnership. It was the collision of two different kinds of talent. One could build a machine. The other could imagine the machine as part of human life. Jobs understood that technology would only matter if people wanted to live with it. It had to feel useful, elegant, and meaningful. That idea would become the emotional engine of Apple. Together, they were not just making computers. They were inventing a future that ordinary people could actually buy. In 1976, Jobs helped create Apple in a garage. The legend of the garage is famous for a reason. It represents the scale of the beginning and the scale of the ambition. They were not building a giant corporation. They were building a dream with limited resources, raw talent, and enormous belief. The first Apple machines were not perfect, but they were important. They proved that personal computers could be more than tools for specialists. They could be made for ordinary people. That idea was revolutionary. Jobs understood that if technology stayed ugly, cold, and hard to use, most people would never love it. But if it became beautiful, simple, and emotional, people would not just buy it, they would want to live with it. Apple II became a real success. Suddenly, Apple was no longer a garage project. It was a serious company. And Steve Jobs was no longer just a young founder with a big dream. He was becoming a business force. But success always changes the temperature. The rise of Apple was fast because the product was different. Apple II did not just sell technology. It sold possibility. It showed people that computers could belong in homes, schools, and offices without feeling cold or intimidating. Jobs cared about more than engineering. He cared about emotion. He cared about how the product looked, how it felt, and how people would remember it. That was the beginning of Apple's identity, not just smart, but desirable. From that moment on, Jobs was no longer trying to enter the industry. He was trying to redefine it. As Apple grew, Jobs' reputation grew with it. He was brilliant, but he was also ruthless. He demanded perfection from the people around him and often pushed them far beyond their comfort zone. He had very little patience for mediocrity, and he showed even less patience for excuses. This made him difficult to work with. It also made him effective. Jobs believed that the best products came from absolute focus. He hated clutter. He hated compromise. He hated anything that made a product feel weak or confused. In his world, a product had to be clear, beautiful, and emotionally strong. If it was not good enough. That philosophy came to life in the Macintosh. When Apple introduced the Mac in 1984, it showed the world a new idea of what personal computing could look like. The machine was not just functional. It had personality. It had style. It felt human. For many people, that was the beginning of a new era. But the same intensity that made Jobs dangerous in business also created serious conflict inside Apple. As the company grew, the internal politics grew with it. Power struggles intensified. Jobs was brilliant, but he was not easy to control, and he was not always easy to trust. Eventually, the company he helped build pushed him out. That fall was brutal. Imagine building the company, shaping the vision, turning the impossible into reality, and then being forced to leave it all behind. For many people, that would have been the end of the story. Jobs turned it into the beginning of another chapter. He did not disappear. He did not give up. He simply started again. After leaving Apple, Jobs founded Next, a company focused on high-end computers and advanced software. Next did not become a massive commercial success, but it did become important. It sharpened Jobs' thinking. It kept him in the game. It showed that he still believed in elegant design, precision, and excellence. Then he made another bold move. He bought Pixar. At the time, Pixar was not the giant creative empire it would later become. It was a risky investment, but Jobs saw something others didn't. He understood that storytelling and technology could work together. He understood that emotion and innovation were not opposites. They were partners. Pixar would go on to transform animation and become one of the most successful creative companies in history. That victory proved something important. Jobs was not only a product man. He had a rare instinct for the future. In 1997, Apple brought Jobs back. The company was in trouble. It had lost direction, clarity, and momentum. It needed more than management. It needed a vision. Jobs returned with a plan that was simple and brutal. Cut what does not work, focus on what matters, and rebuild from the inside out. He removed weak products. He simplified the lineup. He forced the company to think again like a startup, not like a tire giant. Then came the iMac. The iMac was colorful, clean, and different from the gray, boring computers people were used to. It was not just a machine. It was a statement. It said that technology could be friendly. It said that style mattered. It said that Apple was back. And this time, the comeback was real. Jobs did not stop there. He understood that a great company cannot survive on one hit. It needs repeated reinvention. It needs products that are not just successful, but unforgettable. The iPod changed music. It made songs portable, personal, and simple to organize. Then iTunes changed the way people bought and managed music. Suddenly, the entire industry had to adapt to Apple's logic. Jobs had done something remarkable again. He had not just made a better device. He had changed the rules of the market. And then, in 2007, Jobs stood on stage and introduced the iPhone. The iPhone was not just another phone. It was 3 products in one: a phone, an iPod, and an internet device. But more than that, it changed expectations. It changed behavior. It changed the relationship between human beings and technology. After the iPhone, nothing was the same. That was Jobs' greatest talent. He did not only compete inside existing categories, he created new ones. He made the future feel obvious only after he had already shown it. Jobs was never a simple hero. He could be inspiring, but he could also be harsh. He could be visionary, but he could also be controlling. He wanted perfection so badly that people around him often felt pressure, fear, or exhaustion. And yet, that discipline was part of what made the results so powerful. Jobs believed that the details mattered. The curve of a device, the color of a screen, the way a box opened, the feeling of holding a product in your hand. To him, all of it mattered. He was not building gadgets. He was building emotional experiences. That is why his products did more than sell. They created loyalty. They created culture. They created identity. Even as his health declined, Jobs remained deeply involved in the direction of Apple. He kept pushing, refining, and demanding more from the company he had made into a global icon. By the time he died in 2011, Apple was no longer just a technology company. It was one of the central forces of modern life. Steve Jobs left behind more than a product line. He left behind a philosophy. Simplicity is powerful, design is strategy, and taste can become a business advantage. He proved that a company does not have to choose between art and profit, between creativity and scale, between beauty and power. If the vision is strong enough, it can have all of them. And maybe that is why his story still matters so much today. Steve Jobs was not easy to work with. He was not easy to understand. And he was not a perfect man. But he was unforgettable. He turned failure into fuel. He turned obsession into innovation. He turned simple electronics into cultural icons. And he showed the world that one determined person, armed with vision and discipline, can reshape how billions of people live. That is the real story of Steve Jobs. Not just the founder of Apple, not just the man in the black turtleneck, but the boy who grew up feeling different and spent his life turning that difference into the future.